The other things that are happening, there is not a single man or woman at the Department of Justice who had anything to do with those prosecutions, meaning the prosecution of the president. She was saying that it's not a conflict of interest for you to be involved in the firing of prosecutors who prosecuted your client, your former client. There's no conflict there? Is that
No, there is. I wasn't involved.
So
would be a
at
conflict.
CPAC, you're taking credit for the firing of these Department of Justice lawyers, but you're not willing to take responsibility before this committee. Is that the case?
Senator Adam Schiff, former federal prosecutor, House impeachment manager, just walked Todd Blanche into a corner built entirely from his own contradictions. Blanche represented Trump in 3 criminal cases, then promised this committee he'd recuse from anything touching those matters. Ethics lawyers told him he must. Yet Schiff shows him bragging at CPAC about firing the very prosecutors who investigated his client. Blanche moved to vacate the convictions of a dozen Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. He put his name on an IRS settlement that shields Trump from tax liability, a deal a federal court called a sham with no adversarial relationship. And then Schiff asked the question that lingers over the whole hearing. What happened to the Todd Blanche, who was once a respected prosecutor in the Southern District of New York? Watch this. But before, if you haven't already, and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me.
Apparent conflict of interest in handling any case involving the president, having been his personal counsel. Did you consult with Joseph Terrell, a senior ethics lawyer at the department?
I believe I met with Mr. Terrell, yes.
Did Mr. Terrell tell you that ethics laws and policies required that you not be involved in cases involving your prior representation of the president?
Yes.
So in those 3 matters, the hush money payment case, January 6th case, Mar-a-Lago case, you were to recuse yourself?
I'm recused, correct. Well, by the way, the cases are not ongoing, Senator, but to the extent there's any work around those cases, yes, I'm recused.
So you said to CPAC a couple months ago, the other things that are happening, there is not a single man or woman at the Department of Justice who had anything to do with those prosecutions, meaning the prosecution of the president. She was saying that it's not a conflict of interest for you to be involved in the firing of prosecutors who prosecuted your client, your former client. There's no conflict there? Is that
No, there is. I wasn't involved.
So
would be a
at
conflict.
CPAC, you're taking credit for the firing of these Department of Justice lawyers, but you're not willing to take responsibility before this committee. Is that the case?
No.
Okay.
I'm making, there's a
You
statement I gave at
were
CPAC.
bragging about this at CPAC, the firing of these prosecutors, the firing of the FBI agents, the getting rid of everyone who investigated your client. You were proud of that, speaking for the Department of Justice, but you don't think that's a conflict of interest. You moved to vacate, I don't think you're going to deny involvement in this, you moved to vacate the convictions of 12 Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, which erased their convictions, restored their gun rights. These people were convicted in the January 6th investigation, which also involved the president, who you represented. You were involved in dismissing those cases, were you not?
I'm the acting attorney general, so yes, my department moved to dismiss. I was not
So
involved.
you didn't recuse yourself from that matter. You were willing?
There's no reason to, from the Proud Boys matter?
Yes,
I mean,
it was.
Lawyer, you know the rules. There are rules that say when I have to be recused, and that's not one of them.
And there are rules. And when you're told to recuse yourself from investigations that you handle for the president, you're supposed to recuse yourself.
No, when I represented the president.
You have also said, you've also refused to release Volume 2 of the Special Counsel's report. That was an investigation into the Mar-a-Lago documents case. How is that not an abundant conflict of interest? Refusing to release to the public an investigative report of an investigation into your client.
I am not a judge. A federal judge.
No. The department's position under you, Mr. Blanche, was do not release the report.
So that position.
If you went into court asking them to release it, it would be released by now. So how is that not a patent conflict of interest?
What you're saying happens to not be true. I did not do that. What you're talking about happened before I became the Deputy Attorney General.
So you support the release of Volume 2?
No, I don't, but I'm recused and had nothing to do with that case. Like, you can't accuse me of violating my ethical rules and then lie about what I did.
So you had nothing to do with the decision to prohibit the release of the report. You had nothing to do with the department's
wasn't in court.
position.
I
No, I'm
wasn't
not
the
asking whether
deputy-
you were in court.
I was-
I'm asking you whether anyone sought your opinion or used your guidance in refusing to release Volume 2.
When
You're
that
saying you had nothing to do with
when
that decision?
litigation was ongoing, I was a private citizen, still representing the President of the United States. It was before March. Since March, to the extent there's been anything in front of that judge,
Mr. Blanche,
I haven't been part of
I
it.
asked you in your last confirmation hearing whether you would release the report, and your answer was no. Your answer was not, I will recuse myself. Your answer was, no, I will not release the report. That was your testimony last before this committee. You subsequently were advised by ethics lawyers not to be involved in these matters, but it appears you were involved in these matters. Let me ask you about another matter.
I wasn't involved. You
Well,
can't say it appears I was
okay,
involved
all right,
when I said
well,
I
let me-
wasn't.
Let me ask you about another one you have your name on.
Jeez, the truth has to matter at some
Yeah,
point.
it does matter. We just don't hear much of it from you. But let me ask you about another matter you have your name on. I don't think you can deny responsibility here, and that is the IRS settlement agreement. So
Yes.
you put your name on this. That absolves the president of tax liabilities in the past. The president was convicted in the case you represented him in of falsifying business records in part for tax purposes. Does this settlement not absolve the president of any liability for tax crimes associated with what he's already been convicted of?
That's not what he was convicted of. It not having to do with
Well,
for tax
I'm happy to
purposes.
read the statement of facts. The participants took steps that mischaracterized for tax purposes the true nature of the payments made in furtherance of the scheme. So you know,
The
Mr.
participant
Blanche,
there was not the president. It was somebody else.
Well, if the president is conspiring with others to falsify business records to help them cheat on taxes, he is also exposed to liability. You know that as well as I do.
He can't be audited for that.
And of course he can be. Of course he can be. And he can be prosecuted for it. But the agreement you signed on behalf of your former client, on behalf of your current client, in a staggering example of self-dealing prohibits that. Let me ask you this. Does this tax agreement, this addendum you signed, also hold him harmless from any audit or tax liability with respect to the billions in crypto money he made in his first year as president?
It's not forward-looking. So to the extent there are taxes filed by the president or his sons or the Trump organization after the date of that agreement, there's no protection.
Well, but before that agreement, so any
So he
taxes...
hasn't filed taxes
so
yet
any-
for money he made last year, right? So
Yes.
no.
So if he
So no protection.
if he filed tax returns this year for money he earned last year, that his sons earned, that his World Liberty Financial, all those people earned and defrauded taxpayers on it, he faces no liability under this
No
agreement you
evidence. There's
signed.
no evidence taxpayers were defrauded, and he is
But
not
there is
protected.
there's
He is
evidence in
not
this
protected.
agreement
He's
that
not
you've
protected.
absolved him of any liability over.
No, I
it.
just said he's not absolved. So the question
So this
was,
agreement doesn't apply to a tax return filed last year
To
or
tax
filed this
returns-
year.
to tax returns filed after the date of the agreement? No,
No,
it does not
before the
apply.
agreement. A tax return filed in this calendar year before this agreement.
Before the agreement, it applies, not
Yes,
after.
okay, so for a tax return filed this year for last year, for the billions he made, there's no tax liability, even if he cheats on his taxes or his kids do or his business do. He is absolved of that further potential liability.
No.
Well, it's in the plain language of your agreement. Did you write this language?
You
by
have
the
to
way?
use the facts, though,
Did
that
you-
he hasn't
did
filed
you-
taxes yet. So when he files taxes, there's no protection based upon this agreement.
Did you write this language?
Did I type it up myself?
Did you write this language?
No.
Well, you put your name to it.
I did.
So who wrote this?
I don't know the person that actually typed it. I don't know who it is.
Was it
within the
one
Department
of the
Justice.
president's lawyers, or was it someone from the Justice Department or IRS?
This document would have been
Yes.
somebody within the Department of Justice.
So you have no idea who that is.
I don't know the name of the person that typed it up.
And did you debate with them the statute of limitations, which clearly would preclude the president's claim, this $10 billion lawsuit?
We had extensive discussions internally about the underlying litigation.
And did you reject the statute of limitations defense?
I'm not a judge. I don't reject
But
things.
you
I mean,
signed an
there was-
agreement
there
for
was-
the
there was
U.S.
discussion around the
You signed an
litigation.
agreement for the U.S. basically indicating that the Justice Department's position that the statute of limitations applies doesn't matter.
I did. That's not what I said. I didn't say that anywhere.
Who rejected the 25 defenses the IRS had to this sham lawsuit? Who rejected them? Who said that these defenses we're not going to accept, we're just going to go with the president's agreement in the slush fund, this immunity?
There was a lot of discussion internally.
But you made the decision.
What's the decision? What do you mean?
You made the decision to not defend the IRS and the Justice Department. You made the decision instead to sign this slush fund agreement.
We made the decision to settle the case, correct?
Yeah. And in doing that, you basically decided that you were going to be the lawyer for the president and the lawyer for the IRS and the Justice Department. As the court found in this case, there was no adversarial relationship.
Yes,
the court found it was a sham. It was a collusive relationship. And what I don't understand, Todd Blanche, what happened to the Todd Blanche who was a prosecutor in the Southern District of New York? What happened to the prosecutor people had respect for? What happened to the prosecutor who once respected the rule of law? What happened to the prosecutor who said that there wouldn't be a whiff of political partisanship and then prosecutes the president's enemies over seashells cases, over making a video stating the plain law and Constitution? What happened to the Todd Blanche of the Southern District of New York that could convert him into you, someone willing to say the president has both the right and the duty to prosecute his political enemies? I cannot imagine the Todd Blanche of the old days would have ever done that. What happened to you, Todd Blanche? I'll tell you this. I think Robert Caro had it right when he said that power doesn't corrupt as much as it reveals. I suspect it has just revealed who you are. And who you are is someone willing to sacrifice everything you once believed in for that title, for that position of Attorney General. And it is a sad story that we have seen from Trump appointee after appointee after appointee. We have seen people compromise themselves little by little and then a lot by a lot until they're sitting before this committee and trying to justify the unjustifiable. I yield back.
Okay.
May I just briefly respond, Chairman?
Yes, you may.
Very briefly. So you asked me what happened to Todd Blanche. I am still here. I am the same exact person I was when I was a federal prosecutor in the SDNY, which is do the right thing and do everything you can to keep communities safe. So when I was a line prosecutor, when I was a supervisor, when I was the head of a division, my motivation and my goal was the same thing with the people who worked with me and worked for me, which is do the right thing, enforce the laws, and put bad guys in jail. And so you spend time talking about, I did not interrupt you. I did not interrupt you. A little courtesy would be appropriate.
Let's be absolutely clear about what Adam Schiff exposed in this hearing. He demonstrated that Todd Blanche, who promised to recuse himself from any matter involving the client he'd defended in 3 criminal cases, was in fact involved in a series of those very matters, culminating in a settlement he personally signed that a federal court found to be a sham. And Schiff did it as a former prosecutor who knows precisely how damning each of these facts is. Schiff begins by pinning down the recusal. Blanche represented Trump in 3 criminal cases: the New York hush money case, the January 6th case, and the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. At his prior appearance, Blanche said he'd consult ethics lawyers about the obvious conflict. Schiff confirms he met with a senior department ethics lawyer, and that the lawyer told him ethics rules required he not be involved in matters touching his prior representation of the president. Blanche agrees he's recused from those 3 cases. Good. That's the standard he set for himself. Then Schiff shows how Blanche crossed it at CPAC. Blanche had boasted that there was not a single person at the Justice Department who had anything to do with the prosecutions of the president, framing the purge of those prosecutors as an achievement. Schiff draws out the contradiction. Blanche took credit at a political rally for firing the very lawyers and FBI agents who investigated his client, but before the committee, he won't take responsibility for it. You can't brag about it at CPAC and disclaim it under oath. And it goes further. Blanche moved to vacate the convictions of 12 Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, erasing their convictions and restoring their gun rights. Those were January 6th cases, the same investigation that touched the president Blanche represented. Blanche confirms his department moved to dismiss them and insists he didn't need to recuse. Recuse from matters connected to your former client. Signing off on dismissals in those matters is exactly what recusal is supposed to prevent. Schiff presses on the refusal to release Volume 2 of the special counsel's report, the investigation into the Mar-a-Lago documents case, Blanche's own former case. The department's position under Blanche was to keep it sealed. Schiff argues that's a patent conflict. Suppress the public report of an investigation into your client. Blanche's defense is that he was recused and the litigation predated his tenure, though. Schiff notes that at his last hearing, Blanche testified flatly that he would not release the report, not that he would recuse from the decision. But the centerpiece is the IRS settlement. And here, Schiff has the one thing Blanche cannot disclaim because his name is on it. Schiff lays it out. Trump was convicted in the hush money case of falsifying business records, in part, for tax purposes. The settlement Blanche signed absolves the president of past tax liability. Schiff reads from the statement of facts that participants took steps mischaracterizing the true nature of the payments for tax purposes, and makes the point that conspiring to falsify records to cheat on taxes creates real liability. Liability this agreement extinguishes. He presses on scope. Does the deal also shield Trump from audit or liability on the billions in crypto money he made in his first year? Blanche says it's not forward-looking, but Schiff sharpens it to the vulnerable point. A tax return filed this year for last year's income before the agreement's date is covered, meaning even if Trump or his sons or the Trump organization cheated on those taxes, the agreement absolves them. And Blanche can't say who even wrote the language he signed. Then Schiff exposes the mechanism of the self-dealing. Trump sued the United States for $10 billion. The IRS had defenses, including a statute of limitations that Schiff says clearly should have precluded the claim. Schiff asks who rejected those defenses, who decided not to defend the IRS and to sign the settlement instead. Blanche concedes they made the decision to settle, which means, as Schiff frames it, Blanche served as the lawyer for the president and the lawyer for the IRS at the same time. And as the court found there was no adversarial relationship, the court called it collusive a sham. And then, Schiff delivers the clothes that gives the hearing its weight. He asked what happened to the Todd Blanche of the Southern District of New York, the prosecutor people respected, who once said there wouldn't be a whiff of political partisanship, and who now prosecutes the president's enemies. He invokes Robert Caro's line that power doesn't corrupt so much as it reveals, and suggests power has simply revealed who Blanche is. Someone willing to sacrifice everything he once believed in for the title of Attorney General. Blanche, given a chance to respond, insists he's the same person he always was, that he does the right thing every day. But the record shift assembled the CPAC boasts, the dismissals, the sealed report, the signed sham settlement, tells a different story than the one Blanche tells about himself. And a prosecutor laid it out piece by piece until the only defense left was to insist he hadn't changed at all. You are watching David Brooke, and if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. Leave a like on this video. If you stuck around at the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.